into it, move with it, and join the dance. A very good afternoon, everyone. This is Asmita Chakroborty, and being here today brings back a flood of memories from my own college days. Days which were filled with freedom. Freedom which also came at a cost, sometimes a mark on a paper or a rank in a crowd. And every misstep was shadowed by a looming threat of failure. What if I don't succeed? And an unyielding demand of performing well in examinations. So basically I could wander, but within the narrow path of perfection. Fast forward to today, and things are very different. I'm no longer a student, but a working professional, navigating a demanding career. So as an architect, I work for very long hours, and you won't believe, but to be here today, I actually had to plead for leave from my office. That was a task. But you know you're an architect when even just one leave from office feels like some kind of an architectural feat. But every bit of that struggle is worth it, because today I get to share my story with you. Now, let me ask you a question. How many of you know what it takes to become an architect? So it's a 5-year-long course with sleepless nights, endless dedication, and a fair amount of blood, sweat, and tears. Now, architecture was my world, and I excelled in it, but that was only one part of my story. Now, the world never paused when I excelled in academics and never marveled at my designs or blueprint. But the moment I would call out my name as Asmita Chakroborty, Miss Tourism India, things were different. So I did not really leave my academic self behind, but instead I found another path where my brilliance couldn't be ignored. Academia sharpened my mind, but the stage, it always, set my soul onto fire. So here's the paradox that I want to talk about today. How does a young girl trapped within the shadows of insecurity break free and become the woman who owes every stage that she steps onto? So this particular journey from the silent corners to reclaiming myself wasn't really easy, because it had those echoes of uncertainty throughout. And through this journey of the weight of expectations and all the self-criticism, I realized a very important lesson, that growth is not about finding yourself, but growth is about creating yourself. So in order to truly understand how I got here on this stage today, I need to take you back to the very beginning of my story, the first brush strokes of the story which is still being written. So I was born in West Bengal, and I grew up in the Middle East in a country called Yemen, where my father had an assignment. And I was just a child, too young to understand the weight of loneliness or why I would feel so different. So since I was the only Indian in that Yemeni preschool, all the other children would make me feel like I did not belong there. They would welcome me with the laughter, the criticism, the mockery. And all of this instilled a sense of fear, and it made me very, very shy as a child. So I remember that because I come from a humble Bengali family, which is very, very academically strong, I was raised with the belief that excellence is the bare minimum. So now, in order to overcome my shyness, my parents enrolled me in different performing arts like Bharatanatyam, fine arts, and Indian vocal music. So I started loving these, these opened a way of creative expression for myself, and I would love performing, but also it came with immense pressure, because perfection was always expected, and I felt like I could not settle for anything less. Now next we moved to Oman, which is another country in the Middle East, and of course going to a new place, new challenges, and I had to take some time to settle in. But this creative expression, which was once a medium to fill the silence, it now showed me a world beyond grades and academics. It basically became my vision. So I started winning different awards in different extracurricular activities, but that little, pressure of being perfect never truly left me. So I had always longed for a sense of familiarity and belongingness, and I thought that when I would come back to India, things would be different. But after coming back to Delhi, I was again faced with mockery, criticism, stares. And this time it was for a very different reason. Because of the way I looked as a child, my hairstyle, and things I never really thought would matter, So basically I came back from a place where I did not belong, only to come back to another one which refused to claim me. So all of this bullying hurt, honestly, but what cut deeper was the slow unraveling of me. Now here's a very interesting thing. My father's vision of my future was very clear. He wanted me to pursue science because of stability, for respect, and for success. And so I take up PCMB, which is physics, chemistry, maths, and biology. And this was not for myself, but for the version of me that others wanted to see. So I realized that every time I took this step, a different dream faded. I could no longer become a music producer or an author or a journalist. Because all those melodies in my mind, the stories that I wanted to write, they were now parts of a life which was unlived. And all of these sacrifices were made in silence, but that weight, it never left me. Now, another fun fact here that I actually got a 95% in my board examination, and instead of feeling accomplished, I felt that I had failed miserably because I did not get 100 in my mathematics. So imagine 95%, a number which is so close to excellence, but all I would think of was the gap, the 1 mark I didn't get, the one wrong answer which erased all the right answers. So basically, it was not just some ink on a paper, but it was like a crack in my confidence, a shadow over my success. Now success, as I said, I realized that society had defined success in the form of grades, and I somewhere felt very trapped in that definition. Now then, I make a very bold decision. I go to my father and I tell him that, Dad, I do not want to be an engineer or a doctor, but instead I want to pursue architecture. Now at that point of time, I had no idea where this decision would lead to, but all I knew was that it would at least give me some amount of creative freedom that I had always craved for. And in order to prove myself, I got an All India rank of 887 in JEE Mains for architecture, and that was a turning point because then I got into a good reputed government college and things appeared to be perfect for a while. But only for a while, because a little later I started realizing that I was actually walking on paths which were paved by others. I was following dreams which weren't really mine. I was carrying expectations which belonged to somebody else. So basically every step, every action was guided by what was considered safe, stable, expected, and acceptable. Now then, a little voice inside me starts questioning that what would life be if you had no courage to do something different? So I decide to step out of the box, and with a lot of belief in myself, trust me, I joined the fashion society of my college. Now just guess what could have happened next. I was kicked out by my fashion society within a few months, and they told me that I walk with a dead face. Now honestly, I wasn't even offended, because if my face was dead then it's certainly alive now, owing runways, gracing campaigns, and telling a story of resilience without uttering a single word. So, as I navigated through architecture, I figured that something was missing. I was always drawn to fashion and pageantry, but I would think that, can I be both? Can I be a model and an architect? And this answer did not come to me very easily. So I started auditioning for Miss India back in 2019, and I was not rejected just once, but I was rejected twice. So the first time, I did not even make it past the first round. Now, coming from a very strong academic background, that was like a crushing blow. It was like a crack in the foundation that I had spent years building. But at that point of time, I realized that failure wasn't my true enemy, but stagnation was. It was a reminder that learning is continuous and change is inevitable. But true strength is not in failure, but in how you transform yourself because of it. And with that in mind, I started working on my fitness, my communication, my stage presence. And by the end of 2019, I was crowned as Times Campus Princess. In 2020, I became a finalist of Miss India, but this time I was rejected yet again, and for an unfair selection process, which I got to know very later. So that ignited something in me that, I did want to be a part of something bigger, but more importantly, I wanted to be a part of something which was right. And if fairness wasn't handed to me, I would rather go out and create it for myself. And my morals, my ethics, that was at a higher place. And with this ideology, I started freelancing as a model. I started taking up shoots. And in the meantime, I also started earning money in college, which felt really nice at that point of time. And also, I was excelling academically, so I was balancing. Now, what I realized was that balance was the true key. Now, after that, sometimes during the path of my modeling, I was judged against unrealistic beauty standards. They would tell me I was not tall enough, not thin enough, not skinny enough. But at that point of time, I realized people always wanted me to fit into a mold. But a voice inside me would tell me that I wasn't here to fit into anybody's world, but I was here to create my own. And just that pushed me further, and I kept going. And in 2021, I found an organization which valued fairness. And yeah, I was crowned as Miss India Tourism. And I got to keep that title for 3 years because of COVID. And that was a life-changing moment for me because it gave me a lot of opportunities. I got a lot of shows as a showstopper. I traveled extensively. But the one thing which really touched my heart was the amount of social work and charity that I could do. Empowering underprivileged girls. All of this made me realize that it's not about the title, but about how you use your voice to uplift others. So in 2023, I have my international pageant of Miss Tourism World in China. And for this, I prepared as hard as I could. I left all the junk food that I could, and I prepared for 1 year. And I went and represented India among 65 countries, and I won the Best Talent Award for India. But what disappointed me was that I could not bring the main crown again. However, what I understood from this entire journey is that titles don't define success, but transformation truly does. So, a very beautiful quote comes to my mind here by Thomas Jefferson, that if you really want something you've never had before, you must be willing to do something you've never done before. So today, as I stand on this stage, which embodies the significance of Pangaea's paradox, Pangea was once a single landmass. But in order to evolve, it had to break free. And that is how life is. In order to grow, you have to let go of who you once were. Because growth is a process, and you just don't get up one day and become the version of yourself that you want to be. So every habit, every thought, and every comfort that you cling to are all threads of the fabric of who you were, but not who you aspire to be. So we are not prisoners of our old habits, but instead, we are, as I call it, the architects of the new ones. For the longest time, I thought I had to choose between the two things, only to realize that I actually could be both with the right balance. So transformation is a process. It's a battle through doubt and fire. And every fall will shape resilience, and every step forward fuels growth. And as you look back, it's not just your own journey that you look back to, but everyone's journey who found strength in it. So, if you ever feel stuck, just remember one thing, that you're not stuck, but you are in the making. So the next version of you, it's waiting, but only you decide when to step forward. Thank you so much, everyone.